com. Joining us now, presidential candidate Carly Fiorina. She was former CEO of Hewlett-Packard. As you know, 2008, she was the chairman of the Victory Center for the Republican National Committee. 2010, she ran a very competitive race against, it's like running against Mrs. Santa Claus, Barbara Boxer of the Golden State. Miss Fiorina, great to have you with us.
Well, good morning, John. Please call me Carly. And now I'm proud to be a Virginia resident once again. My husband and I moved back home to Virginia several years ago.
Well, great to have you here in Virginia in the Commonwealth. And we need Republican voters in Northern Virginia, so I'm glad you're up there. Good move. At least we're +2. Anyway, assuming you can talk your husband into, good things like. I want to start, if I can. The New York Times did a profile on you recently. Pretty interesting piece, I thought, and it said that, in part, when it comes to putting the spotlight on Hillary Clinton's political blemishes, Fiorina has been credited with pointing a laser beam on the former First Lady's problems. Has that been able to give you some separation from the field and motivation behind that, Carly?
Well, first, of course, I am not yet an officially declared candidate for the presidency. No one else is yet either, but I'm certainly getting very close to making that decision. Second, I think one of the things that Americans are tired of is politicians who have big titles and big positions and give speeches but don't really accomplish anything. And so I think it's entirely legitimate. I come from a world where words don't count, accomplishments and results do. And so I think it's entirely legitimate to ask any official, particularly someone running for president, what have you actually accomplished? What is your track record? And so that's been the question I have asked of Mrs. Clinton. Like her, I too have traveled hundreds of thousands of miles around the globe, but flying is an activity. It's not an accomplishment. And I think it's fair to say that the world is a more troubled and dangerous place since her tenure as Secretary of State.
If I can get through some of the issues here, because I think let's just start with stay on the Hillary track for a second. The email scandal. A lot of Democrats saying, it's all to do about nothing. At the end of the day, she was following the spirit of the law. What say you?
Well, I say a couple things. First, I think transparency is a core part of leadership. Leaders need to be transparent so that people can trust them, trust their character, trust that their actions are consistent with their words. And so when Mrs. Clinton and others are not transparent, it's very hard to trust her, particularly because we know she has a track record of not telling us the truth. This is the same person who told us that Benghazi was a demonstration gone bad and the fault of a videographer in L.A., when it's now clear she and the Department of State knew it was a purposeful terrorist attack, and yet she continued that fiction for almost a month. I also think it's kind of, as someone who comes from the world of technology, she made the statement that her server couldn't possibly have been hacked because it was guarded by 2 Secret Service agents. No one's worried about the server getting stolen. Mm-hmm. They're worried about the server getting hacked. And if hackers can get into Bank of America, Target, Home Depot, Sony, they certainly can get into the Secretary of State's server in her basement.
Look, no question. You think this has got legs? I mean, the Associated Press has said they're going to initiate a suit in order to get all these emails. Do you think that'll ever happen?
Well, I don't know, but here's what I do know. We need to beat Hillary Clinton. We need to win in 2016. She will be the nominee of her party despite this, because at her core she thinks this is a partisan kerfuffle as opposed to something really substantive. She'll be the nominee of her party, and so we need a nominee. I believe we need a conservative who can unify the party so we don't leave votes on the table as we did in 2012 and 2008.
Right.
We need a nominee who can reach beyond the party, but we also need a nominee who will take the shots that Hillary Clinton deserves. And so if we have a nominee that pulls their punches, as we did in 2012 over Benghazi, if we have a nominee that pulls their punches over the email scandal, it will fade, but it shouldn't. because it goes to the core of her judgment and it goes to the core of her trustworthiness. And those are legitimate questions for a leader.
We're chatting with expected GOP presidential candidate Carly Fiorina. Let's get to the big Bibi victory in Israel. A lot of people thought he was going to go down. Public opinion polls in the final week showed the Likud party in decline. Now we find out that a lot of operatives that worked for the OFA, Obama for America, that many of them went to Israel, millions of dollars spent there. It all blew up. Bibi wins. Why?
Well, Bibi wins, and by the way, not only did he won decisively with 70% of Israelis voting.
Right.
So this was a pretty decisive victory. I think we learn a couple things from this. One, polls are frequently wrong. Two, Israelis understand that they need strong leadership at this time. And Bibi Netanyahu, whom I have known for many years, Bibi Netanyahu is a strong leader, and that strength and leadership are deeply appreciated by the Israeli people, clearly.
What about at the end when he said there will not be a Palestinian state under my watch? What kind of influence do you think that had, Carly?
Well, Netanyahu has demonstrated over and over again that he is willing to negotiate and compromise for a two-state solution, and he has been rebuffed on every occasion. And not only has he been rebuffed, but he has been rebuked by this White House completely inappropriately. They are equating in the White House Hamas, a terrorist organization, to the legitimately elected Israeli government. So I think Netanyahu is basically saying, look, until the other side is willing to acknowledge our right to exist, sort of foundational table stakes, I'm not interested in this anymore. And who can blame him? He's tried for a very long time.
We're with expected Republican presidential candidate Carly Fiorina. Carly, the unprecedented letter penned and signed by 47 Senate Republicans sent to Iran, troubled about the deal that they think this president is going to cut with the Iranians. Do you think that letter sent that way, which was unprecedented, sets a bad precedent? Do you think it was ill-advised?
Well, I understand those 47 senators' frustration. I really do. And their frustration is the same thing that caused Bibi Netanyahu, in another unprecedented move, to come and address Congress so that the American people would hear his concerns, which are well-founded and long-standing. I really believe the right answer here is for a bipartisan, veto-proof majority of senators to send a letter to President Obama. That bipartisan, veto-proof majority is in the works. I think that's the right answer because the Senate has a very legitimate role in this process, and the president has rebuffed their role. It's very concerning.
I think you're exactly right. I think that would have been a much better approach. Fast track, trade authority. It's hard for a lot of people that are concerned about some of the deals this president has made, Cuba being one of them, why you would cede additional authority on trade in a non-transparent fashion to President Obama. If you were president, would you be seeking that authority as well?
Well, I have to say, I believe trade advantages our nation. And because we are the most competitive nation in the world, we have the best products and the best workforce. It has to be fair trade, and it's not always fair trade. I mean, trade with China isn't fair, for example, in many instances. And so I have been frustrated when I've seen trade agreements get derailed by a lot of extraneous issues. On the other hand, your question is an example of why transparency is so important. Because the reason senators who, in the past, have supported fast-track trade authority are balking now is not because they're against trade. It's because they don't trust this president. And they don't trust this president because he has not been transparent over a whole series of issues.
So what you're saying, Carly, is that you would be in favor of presidential authority for fast track if there was a transparent process, which there's not.
That's now, right.
Because
Exactly.
they're meeting in secret. They're meeting behind closed doors.
That's right. That's exactly right. Transparency is vital. If people don't understand what's going on, then they cannot trust. And if they cannot trust, then authority, even if it's legitimate, is undermined. And so, this White House famously has claimed it's the most transparent White House in history. It's ridiculous. It's just exactly the opposite.
It's a totally asinine claim, no question. We're with anticipated presidential candidate on the Republican side, Carly Fiorina. Carly, I want to get to domestic policy, amnesty in November. In this speech, saying that he was going to do this executive fiat to make 4 to 5 million people who are here illegally, give them legal status. One of the things Obama said is he said, there's going to be no benefit eligibility. Now we find out that they're going to be eligible for earned income tax credit, having paid nothing in, could be up to $24,000. They're going to be eligible for Social Security, having paid very little in. That system in financial chaos now. They're going to be eligible for a litany of benefits, including food stamps. What do you say to my audience right now on their way to work in Virginia, trying to make ends meet, playing by the rules? They don't get squat, and now we're going to give all this money to illegals, Carly, that have broken the law at least twice. Once to come in, once to have a job. How is that right?
It's not right. It's not right. And President Obama was dead wrong to do this. And he did this to provoke Republicans. He did it for political purposes. I mean, it is the height of cynicism. And by the way, it doesn't help resolve the issue. So one of the things that I find most objectionable, not only is this wrong, not only is it unfair, but this is the same president who sunk comprehensive immigration reform when he was a senator, when he became president and had a Democratic majority in the Senate and a Democratic majority in the House. He didn't tackle immigration reform. He then set it aside. He told America that he couldn't do anything about it in 11 and 12. Then he wouldn't do anything about it before the election. In other words, this is cynical politics, and it's always been so. He doesn't want this issue resolved. And his executive action, on top of being wrong and unfair, makes it harder to resolve. And I think it's one of the reasons why people have lost fundamental trust in his leadership.
I was at a Ted Cruz event last night in Arlington, Northern Virginia. Senators saying, look, I'm the only guy that's going to get rid of Obamacare, but he didn't have a replacement idea. If you were president, what would you do right now with this mess?
Well, first we have to repeal it. And we have to repeal it because the law is longer than a Harry Potter novel. That's how long this thing is, and it's accompanied by 30,000 pages of additional regulation. In other words, it's so complicated, it's so convoluted, nobody can understand it. And when that happens, crony capitalism rears its ugly head, just as it did with Dodd-Frank. So we have to repeal it. And of course, because the law wasn't very interesting, not nearly as interesting as the Harry Potter novel, nobody read it. Let's try the one thing we've never tried in this country: a truly competitive health insurance market. Health insurance has been a regulated oligopoly in 50 states. The health insurance companies have worked with their regulators to try and limit competition.
Right.
So let's have real competition. Yes, we need to protect people who truly cannot take care of themselves. Yes, we need to protect people with pre-existing conditions. I'm a cancer survivor. I understand how important that is. But we can do that in a very targeted, far more cost-effective way. And let's let competition do what competition always does: provide greater value at lower prices.
What, Carly, would be your plan in dealing with ISIS? Would you be in favor of U.S. ground troops? Why or why not?
Well, President Obama has provided the nation with a false choice. What he's basically said is either I can't do anything or I have to go to war. And the reason that's a false choice is because we have been asked by our allies to do many, many important things that would make a difference, and we're not doing any of them. We've been asked to arm the Kurds. We're not. We were asked by King Abdullah of Jordan, whom I also know very well, to provide bombs and materiel to the Kingdom of Jordan. We have not. We were asked by the President of Egypt to provide intelligence and support as they work very hard to combat ISIS. We haven't done that. Oh, by the way, we've also been asked to arm the Ukrainians. We haven't done that either. To bolster our Eastern European defenses. We haven't done it. In other words, there are all kinds of things we could do to show leadership, which we must show now. I know a lot of folks in the Middle East, the Jordanians, the Qataris, the Saudis, the Emiratis. And by the way, we've also been asked by Israel to stop talking to Iran. There is an opportunity to build an alliance here that can effectively go up against ISIS, but we have to lead, and we have to show strength and resolve, and we have to stand with our allies, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Kurds, the Saudis. We're not. And so they are obviously uncomfortable and unwilling to go as far as we need them to go.
We've got 2 minutes. Final question. We're with expected, anticipated, potential GOP candidate for president, Carly Fiorina. Now, some people have said, look, your campaign right now, the status it's in is kind of Donald Trumpian. It's kind of PR purposes. There's no real pathway to victory. When it's all done, you're going to go on the speaking tour, write a book, make more money. How do you dispel that? And if you do indeed get in this race, what is your pathway to victory?
Well, first, I am making very serious steps to prepare for a campaign. Should I make that final decision? We have a real organization. We have real people on the ground. If I do this, it's going to be a serious effort, and I will be in it, as Hillary once said, to win it. Secondly, as I have spent years really talking to Americans all across the country, people are kind of tired of traditional politicians. They're kind of tired of politics as usual because it all sounds the same and nothing ever changes. And so I'm entirely different from anyone else running. I started out as a secretary and became the CEO of the largest technology company in the world. That's only possible in America. But it means I really do understand the economy and how it works. I understand how bureaucracies work. I understand technology. I understand how the world works and have been in and around it for a long time, know most of the world leaders on the stage today. And I'm used to making executive decisions, which are tough calls in tough times, with high stakes for which you're willing to be held accountable. I think all of those things qualify me for the job, and I think people are tired of all the same old stuff and nothing ever really changing. So if I get in it, I think there's a clear path. But that doesn't mean necessarily that it won't be a hard-fought contest, and we have a lot of interesting and qualified people in this field, but I think I'll stand out.
I think your candidacy would certainly be interesting and inspiring, and we certainly encourage you to go forward. I want to thank Carly Fiorina for being with us today. If you want more information, go to carlyforamerica.com. How easy is that? carlyforamerica.com. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, John. Great to have you. Have a great day.